geography, urban planning. So I see my work as being really at the crossroads of history and the social sciences, which was the subject of the previous panel. So I'm working, as I said, at the crossroads of history and urban studies, and so I'm asking questions from a historian point of view, but also from a social science point of view. So yeah, the title of my paper is Under Your Feet, a Wonderful System, Burying Montreal's Electricity Distribution Network from the 1890s until the 1910s. So the starting point of my research is kind of a discomfort with the way infrastructure is portrayed in, I would say, urban studies. So contemporary urban studies portrays infrastructure as something that's always invisible, that's universal, linking all the customers together, that is ubiquitous but is forgotten. Sorry. I was kind of disappointed with that framing because I don't think this holds geographically and historically, right? So if you think about the different places in the world, let's call it the global south, for example, there are numerous case studies in anthropology, for example, that demonstrate how infrastructure is anything but invisible in cities in Africa, for example, in Southeast Asia. So infrastructure is everywhere for the citizens. They understand how it works technically. They are well versed with the system, so it's far from invisible. They have to deal with it every day. So this is the first discomfort with the statement that says that infrastructure is always invisible, which doesn't hold geographically. Secondly, it doesn't hold historically, because so I did my research on the electrification of Montreal, and anybody that works on the history of electricity, especially in the beginnings, the end of the 19th century in the West, will also see that this infrastructure is anything but invisible. So it's there's numerous poles and wires everywhere on the streets, different networks coexisting, and a lot of accidents happening, as I will detail after. So it's not historically this kind of invisibility doesn't hold. So this is the starting point. We need a historical case study to kind of situate what we mean by invisibility and how it becomes, how a certain infrastructure or electrical network becomes invisible, for who it becomes invisible, under what conditions, and how the context, this is local context, in my case urban context, but national context as well, is going to shape this historical process. Just a little introduction. Montreal at the turn of the 20th century. So you have a map here that is showing you where Montreal is. It's near the border with the United States. So at the turn of the 20th century, Montreal is the metropolis of Canada. It's the biggest city. 1901, there are 325,000 inhabitants. So it's, as I said, Canada's metropolis, industrial metropolis, economic metropolis as well. You can see on the other image the kind of this is near the Le Chine Canal, which is like the industrial heartbed of Canada. So there are many industries there, and you can see all this coal being burned. So at the turn of the 20th century, energy is very much visible for citizens of Montreal, whether it is on their workplace, so as this picture shows, or at home. So the energy sources mostly used in Montreal at that time are wood and coal. So I wanted to get kind of a finer grained look at how energy landscapes evolve. So I went to look at insurance plans, which is kind of a classic source in urban history. And so here I looked at a specific residential area, working class area, which is now called the Plateau Mont-Royal, a gentrified neighborhood, but at the time working class. So you see on the left is the insurance plant in 1907. So where you have the wood symbol is kind of a place where wood is being sold, is being being held, and then the black symbols are places where coal is present in the urban landscape, and then you also have a small electric station that is powered by coal. So you can see on this image that in 1907, for these urban people, energy is very present, as you can see. And then if you go in 1955, so half a century later, you can see that in the same area, much has changed, especially the urban energy landscape has transformed. So you almost have no wood being present there. You have a gas station that's kind of new. So this is kind of a transformation that happens. The same in a bigger area. This is, let's say, the industrial downtown of Montreal, where most of the industries were located. So if you see on the left in 1909, a lot of places where coal is present, you have a lot of wood. Chedwa, you have electrical substations, and you only have one place where petroleum is found. And then you go 40 years later, and then you have this whole area is transformed. You have a lot more gas stations, but you also almost have no wood present in the area, and coal also has pretty much disappeared. So this is kind of the bigger picture of how energy disappears in some ways from cities. But I wanted to get a more detailed look, so I look at the case of the electric distribution network, which is the focus of this presentation. So if you go to the end of the 19th century, electricity is very much of an urban problem for many different reasons and for many different groups of people. So first of all, as you can see from this image taken in a newspaper at the end of the 19th century, it's a bodily hazard for regular urbanites walking the streets of Montreal. So you have all kinds of wires hanging out from the streets, not properly insulated. So if you don't look properly, you might get electrocuted, get a shock. So this is a bodily hazard for a lot of people, notably workers, firemen, electrical workers, all these working class people that work these kinds of labor that are highly dangerous. So bodily hazard first. Fire hazard as well. So you have so many different networks coexisting in a cacophonous way. So you have the telegraph system, you have the tramway system, the streetcar system, you have the electric distribution system. You also have alert systems for police, or even universities have some of them. So all these aren't planned properly, so they're coexisting. And so when you have two wires entering together and they're not properly insulated, then you can have fires. So this is very dangerous, especially in the downtown core of Montreal, where most of these networks are situated. And then you also have kind of an aesthetic inconvenience for the bourgeois, the middle class aesthetic that is looking for clean cities, sanitary cities, open plans and stuff. So for all these reasons, it's a big problem in urban spaces at the time. So you have different positions, different groups that advocate for different interests related to this problem. So first of all, the municipality is very reluctant to keep the situation as it is. It's looking to bury all these networks because, for all the reasons I said before, in particular the fire hazard. So it's trying to force the companies to bury their overhead systems, but in Montreal, as in most of North America, municipalities and local councils have a limited power over urban utilities. So in 1890, a law is passed to compel the companies, to oblige them to bury their systems, but they don't respect it. The municipality doesn't have the willpower the necessary bureaucracy to have it enforced, so it's kind of ignored. Utilities have ambiguous discourses and practices regarding this problem. So on the one hand, they're saying that all these systems should be buried, so they see the potential. They say that it's going to eliminate coal and steam engines, it's going to reduce the noise, the dust, and urban risk in general. So this is in their discourses. They're saying that they make a case for burying all these overhead wires and poles, although they recognize the financial problems associated with that. So it's 3 to 10 times more expensive to build an underground conduit and put everything in there compared to just building it overhead. So there's a financial problem there for sure. So this is the discourse, but in practice, in part because the municipality doesn't really have the power to reduce, to compel the utilities into burying everything. So what happens in practice is that they keep building overhead poles and wires for the majority of their equipment. And then you have different economic elites arguing for underground conduits, notably chambers of commerce that are advocating, starting in 1889, for underground systems for all the reasons mentioned before. And so what I found out doing research in the archives, something that wasn't really documented to my knowledge, was the decisive role of fire insurers in actually compelling all the different actors into coming together and solving this problem. So what they did, they had two kinds of things that they could do using the carrot and the stick. The carrot, meaning that they had techniques to compel the utilities into burying by saying that if you bury these systems, we will reduce your insurance premiums. But on the other hand, if you don't do it, we might have to bring them higher. So this was a crucial role I found in the archive, was that of the fire insurers. So every year they release annual reports on different fire hazards for each city and each municipality in Montreal. So they're saying you don't have enough water hoses in there, you don't have enough firemen, so you have to change this and that, otherwise we will increase your insurance premiums. So they're using insurance premiums as a leverage to decrease urban risk, basically, because for them fires and urban hazard in general is detrimental to their profits, so that they're really acting as a kind of urban pacifier in this case, in the case of the electrical system. So they're in the 1900s, they really start to get involved in this after much lobby from the chambers of commerce, who are trying to get the insurance premiums in downtown Montreal lowered. So they're advocating for lower rates. And so the Canadian Fire Underwriters Association publishes a report in 1907 that is sent out to the municipality and is very much covered in the media, in the press at the time, that says that the Canadian Fire Underwriters Association intends to lower the amount of risks insured in downtown Montreal and increase insurance premiums if nothing is done regarding this overhead electrical system. So they're really pushing for underground systems, and they're saying that there will be financial repercussions if nothing happens. So this is kind of somewhat a decisive report. It's read also in the municipal councils and everything. And so thanks to this report, there's the Electrical Commission of the City of Montreal that's founded in 1911, which is responsible for all the underground conduits and burying all these overhead systems, which has a kind of decisive role. So you see on this map here, it's 20 years later. So it's founded in 1911, and this is taken from a report in 1930. and all the blue areas are where conduits are installed and poles removed. Of course, this is more of the downtown core of Montreal, and then what happens is in the outer neighborhoods, further away from the city center, a lot of the poles and wires are very much present in Montreal. So you have kind of a disappearance of the electrical system with the years, thanks to the action of a constellation of actors that was really put together by, I argue, the fire insurance industry. So in conclusion, you can see that, first of all, many different actors have an interest in insulating infrastructure, both from natural hazards and from social hazards. So natural hazards would be the risk of fire, or is also the risk of winter conditions. I didn't put this image, but in Montreal, the winters are very, very cold and there's a lot of ice. So this is dangerous for networks as well. So you have utility planners have a real interest in insulating infrastructure from natural hazards as well as from social hazards. I couldn't cover this in my presentation, but social hazards meaning sabotage, for example, and theft from electricity. So all these kinds of things aren't as easily done if the network is insulated from the environment. And so invisibility is more of an ideal than, I would say, a given. Historically and geographically, system planners tend towards invisibility for the reason that infrastructure has to be insulated, but it's never completely achieved. So even in Montreal, you still have a lot of poles and wires hanging in different streets. It depends on the area where you're looking at. And finally, kind of a reflection point for today, insurance as a possible pressure point for climate crisis. I argued in this presentation that fire insurers really played a big role in having the underground conduits placed and the overhead system deleted in at least in downtown Montreal because of the financial pressure that they could apply. So really insurers act as kind of an urban pacifier throughout history. So maybe they could be not the key, but an important player if they were to decarbonize many different areas. So this is my presentation. Thanks for listening.